You clicked. Now it's too late to stop watching. Welcome to One Click Too Far. Germany, 1922. There's something unsettling about silence in the countryside. It's not the kind of silence you find in a quiet park or on a peaceful morning. No, it's older, heavier, the kind of silence that clings to wooden beams and rotting earth, that echoes between the trees long after the last scream has faded. And on a cold night in Bavaria, in March 1922, that silence was shattered. Not by thunder, not by wind, but by something far darker. This is the story of Hinterkaifeck, a remote farmhouse hidden behind the woods, a family slaughtered, a killer who stayed and watched, and nearly a century later, no one knows who did it. Let's go back. Andreas Gruber was not a kind man. At 63, he ruled the farm with a clenched fist and a cold gaze. His wife, Cecilia, now 72, had grown quiet over the years. Their daughter Victoria had returned after the death of her husband in the war, or so they believed. Rumors swirled around the village that Josef, Victoria's young child, wasn't the son of a dead soldier, but of her own father. It was whispered, it was known, and it was ignored. The Grubers lived alone, tucked deep in the forest near the village of Kaifeck, far from neighbors, far from help. That isolation would soon become a death sentence. In the weeks leading up to the murders, something felt off. Footsteps in the attic. But no one was there. A newspaper appeared in the house. One no one subscribed to. No one in town had even seen it. One night, Andreas found footprints in the snow. They came from the woods, but none led back. And just days before the massacre, the new maid arrived. Maria Baumgartner. She was quiet, older, and had taken the job after the last maid quit. Terrified, convinced the house was haunted. Maria would not live to see another sunrise. On the night of March 31st, someone entered the barn. We don't know how, we don't know when, but we know what happened next. One by one, the family was lured outside, perhaps by noises in the stable, perhaps by instinct, and then they were killed, not shot, not stabbed, but bludgeoned with a mattock, a heavy farming tool, dull on one side, sharp on the other. Andreas, Cecilia, Victoria, little Cecilia, only 7 years old, all found stacked like firewood in the barn, bodies partially covered with hay. And that's not the end. Inside the house, Maria Baumgartner lay dead in her bed, and little Josef, just 2 years old, was killed in his bassinet. But the most disturbing part was what happened after. The killer stayed. For days, they fed the livestock, ate meals, lit fires in the hearth. They lived among the corpses. When neighbors came by to check on the family, they saw smoke coming from the chimney. No one answered the door. It wasn't until April 4th that someone entered the barn and found the bodies. The police were called, but the scene was already contaminated. Curious villagers had walked through the house, moved things, cooked in the kitchen, evidence was lost. Still, investigators uncovered horrifying details. Little Kazelia had lived for hours after the attack. Tufts of her hair were found clenched in her hands, torn out in agony, and the killer had hidden the weapon, the bloodied mattock, in the attic. The same attic where footsteps had once echoed. But who could have done this? Theories flooded in. Was it Laurent Schlittenbauer, the neighbor who had once loved Victoria and possibly fathered Joseph? He entered the house alone, used a missing key, and seemed to know too much. Or was it Carl Gabriel, Victoria's dead husband whose body was never found? Had he returned from the war only to discover the child wasn't his? Maybe it was someone else entirely, a drifter, a madman, or someone the family trusted. The case remains open. It's been over 100 years, and still no one knows who did it. No confession, no clear suspect, just a broken family, a bloody barn, and a house full of secrets, a mystery buried in silence. But on that old farm, something still lingers. The floorboards creak even when no one is there. Cold wind slips through the cracks, and the attic, it never stays empty for long. Hinterkaifeck was never just a place, it was a warning that evil doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just waits, in the quiet, in the dark, just behind the door you didn't mean to open. Some doors should never be opened. Some clicks go too far. But now that you're here, you've seen what's inside. And if this gave you chills, there's more waiting for you. Darker stories, colder nights, and secrets that don't like to stay buried. You've just taken one click too far. Subscribe if you dare.